Now that we've concluded your favorite unit on trig identities, we're going to look at non-right triangles. And the first thing we're going to do is talk about the area of non-right triangles, and then we're going to use that to find the law of sines. Before we start, you need to know how to find the area of a right triangle. You also need to know how to use sine, cosine, and tangent to find the missing sides of a triangle. Hopefully you know that from what we've been doing all year, but you also need to use arcsine, arccosine, and arctangent, also known as inverse trig functions, to be able to find the angles in a right triangle. So area of a right triangle, or any triangle actually, is 1/2 base times height. And as you can see, we have 3 different kinds of triangles here. We have a right triangle, and it's really nice and handy because the height is actually one side of my right triangle. And here I have this one, I have an acute triangle, and the height, if that's my base, is this. And over here I have an obtuse triangle, and in order to find the height I have to drop an altitude down that forms a right triangle outside of my triangle. So this one I have 2 non-right triangles. One of them I have all 3 sides, and one of them is I have the side here, the angle, and the side. You'll notice that these are acute triangles. So where does the height come from? Is it inside the triangle or outside the triangle? Well, because it's an acute triangle, it's going to come from on the inside of the triangle, and it's going to form a right angle with the base. We can use right triangle trigonometry to find that height, because if you'll notice over here I have, well, here's my right angle. Over here I have a hypotenuse, and over here I have an angle. If I take that and separate that out, I have the angle. I'm looking for the opposite side, and I have the hypotenuse. Hopefully you know by now that I can use the sine ratio to find that height. So here I have the sine of the angle equals opposite over hypotenuse. So in this case, it's going to be the sine of 49 is equal to h over 8 centimeters. Okay, so that means that my height is equal to 8 centimeters times the sine of 49. Oops, I'm running out of room. Now I can find the area, because that's my height. We know that area is 1/2 the base times the height. Well, this is my height down here. My base is over here. It's 10 centimeters. So the area is 1/2 the base times the height. And I'm not going to find the value of h before I calculate this, because trig ratios are really sensitive to rounding, and I don't want to get a rounding error. So I'm going to put this in my calculator all in one step. And if you notice, our angles given to us in degrees, we're going to make sure that our calculator is in degrees. And when I put that in, I end up getting an area of about 30.2 centimeters squared. Let's try another one. I have another triangle here. I have two sides and an angle. If you'll notice that I have side, angle, side. I need side, angle, side in order to calculate the area of a non-right triangle. Now I need to choose which side I want to be my base. Well, because 10 is on closer to my bottom, I'm going to make 10 the base. And I'm dropping an altitude from the opposite angle, and now this is the height. And now I can use the sine ratio. I have the angle, the sine of 40 is equal to the opposite side, my height, divided by 9 centimeters. Okay, that means that my height equals 9 centimeters times the sine of 40, right? I'm just multiplying both sides of the equation by 9 centimeters to cancel out the 9 over here. Okay, now that I have my height, I can go ahead and calculate the area. Area is 1/2 the base. My base is 10 centimeters. Oops, I forgot the centimeters. And times the height. I have the height. I'm going to substitute in 9 centimeters times the sine of 40 degrees. Again, I wouldn't round. I would put this all in my calculator in one step because you don't want to get a rounding error. When I calculate that, I end up getting 28.9 centimeters squared. It's as simple as that to calculate the area of a non-right triangle. Okay, now it's your turn. I want you to try this one. Pause the screen for a minute and then try on your own and then restart it and check your answer. Okay, how'd you do? Let's go over this. Area is 1/2 base times height. I have side, angle, side. So if I made 31 my base, I would drop down my altitude and make my right triangle, and then I could calculate the height. The height is the sine ratio for the angle 82 degrees of the height over 25. Height is going to then equal 25 times the sine of 182. That means the area is 1/2 the base 31 times the height 25 sine of 82. If you calculated it correctly using that as your base, you would get 383.7 kilometers squared. So you might ask, well, what happens if I choose the wrong base? What if, let me try erasing some of this stuff.